I'm at my house.
And I am not at Chloe's house.
So this is a Chloe video. At the end of our last video, we said that our next video would be our treatment of Stranger Things Season 5, and we did film that, but it's going to take a few more weeks for me to finish editing it because Noah left me alone for a few months and I wrote a 100-page script, so that will be coming very soon. But first, you get my two-part video about all of the Stranger Things books. Over the summer, I hyperfixated real hard on Stranger Things again and remembered that there were tie-in novels, so I picked up the Max one, and it was really good. So I read the Robin one, and then I decided that if I made a video out of it, I would be justified in reading all 5 of them, and also some comics in the upcoming 6th one, and also some other stuff we'll get to in part 2. If I have timed this out right, then as I post this, we should be days away from the release of the latest Stranger Things book, Flight of Icarus, which is an Eddie Munson prequel. None of these books are connected to each other, so they can all be read separately, but if you are curious about the books and you're looking for where to start, here is a comprehensive overview of every book that is currently available. Or a book report on what I read this summer. The first Stranger Things companion novel, Suspicious Minds by Gwenda Bond, was published in 2019, and it is a prequel about Elle's mother, Terry Ives, when she joined Dr. Brenner's study back in 1969. The first 2 official novels focused more on the adult characters, the first on Terry Ives and Dr. Brenner, and the second on Hopper. Personally, I liked the first a lot more, and for me it worked better as a Stranger Things novel because it actually expands on an important subplot in the show. Also, as a quick note, I know that these books are kind of canon adjacent. Like, they are official books, but they aren't written by the Duffer Brothers, so the authors can take some liberties with the details, but for convenience sake, I will be referring to them all as canon. The book starts in 1969 when Terry Ives is a poor college student who signs up for a scientific study when she hears that it pays really well. The study is specifically looking for exceptional young women, and Terry is chosen with 3 other people to be test subjects. The other subjects all have POV chapters throughout the book, so we get to know them each really well, and their characters all feel like they fit well in the Stranger Things universe. They are Gloria Flowers, a brilliant biology major and comic book lover, Alice Johnson, a mechanic fascinated by machines, and Ken, a gay psychic. They only called for young women, but Ken showed up anyway because he sensed that he was meant to be there with his psychic powers that nobody else believes in. The 4 of them grow closer and become allies as the tests go on, and they each become more and more suspicious of what's really going on in the lab and what Brenner is really researching. Once a week, they are all taken to small rooms and given tabs of acid and, in Alice's case, electroshock therapy. Alice begins to have visions of a dark place filled with vines and floating spores and grotesque monsters with heads that open like flowers. She also sees a young girl with a shaved head and the number 11 tattooed on her wrist. Terry also sees a young girl with a number tattoo when she sneaks out of her room and finds Callie. Callie is 5 years old and has recently been brought to the lab by Brenner and is being kept in isolation. Terry is able to slip into the black mind void when she's on acid, and she and Callie are able to meet up in secret there. Terry has a boyfriend named Andrew, who Brenner gets drafted to Vietnam in an attempt to strengthen his control over Terry, and when she finds out she's 7 months pregnant, she calls to tell his parents and is told that he is dead. Brenner's a creep about the baby, and she decides that she cannot let him take her baby. Also, she goes to the OBGYN and reads an article in the waiting room about Jane Goodall and decides to name her baby Jane because she sounds like the polar opposite of Brenner. Jane Goodall treats animals like people, and Brenner treats people like animals. There's some plot stuff, and Terry and her friends have to stage an elaborate escape from the lab, and they succeed, but Brenner secretly dosed Terry with something to induce labor, and when she gets to the hospital, he sneaks in and steals Elle. As a book, I would give it like an 8 out of 10, I think. Mystery, conspiracy books aren't really my go-to, but this was good, and the author did a good job of developing all the characters around Terry so that it felt like I was invested in their stories too, and it didn't just feel like somebody's OCs being thrown in to fill out the space. Like, they felt like characters who could be in Stranger Things. As a Stranger Things prequel, I'd give it a 10 out of 10. Honestly, this is the only book on this list that really feels justified to exist, if that makes sense. Like, I really enjoyed all the teen books, and the Hopper one was also a prequel that did give some context to his character, but none of those were really answering questions that I had from the show. I don't think there was anything that directly conflicted with the new lore from season 4, but I do wish they'd been able to work some of that into the book. Either way, I would recommend it if you were at all intrigued by the Terry Ives plot. Also, at one point, she and Elle's father dress up as Sam and Frodo for Halloween, and that was very cute. The second book is Darkness on the Edge of Town by Adam Christopher, also published in 2019. To quote our good friend V, "Red is a strong word. If you like to read gritty crime detective novels or Hopper is your most favorite character, then you would probably like this book. I like Hopper, but not even the Bruce Springsteen title was enough to make me read a gritty crime mystery novel. I read about like 50 pages and then I gave up and just skipped through to read the parts with Elle, and those were very cute. The framing device is that it's Christmas after season 2, and all the kids are out of town visiting family, so Elle is bored in the cabin without her friends to talk to, so Hopper agrees to tell her more about his life to entertain her. I was worried it would just abandon this very sweet premise until the end, but luckily it cuts back to them throughout the book, so Elle can ask questions, give commentary on Hopper's story, and it's very Princess Bride, if instead of a fun adventure story, it was about Hopper being a gritty big city homicide cop. Unfortunately, as I said before, I simply don't care for gritty detective novels, so this one wasn't really for me. There was a serial killer, and I think Hopper got kidnapped and taken hostage or something. I think there were notes from the killer. It could have been the Zodiac killer, I don't know. The fun bits were, the kids got Elle her own walkie-talkie for Christmas, and she loves it. Hopper's new detective partner was the first woman on the squad, and she was very fun. I think she was a lesbian. Hopper mentioned drinking an egg cream with his wife at one point, so Elle asked him to make one for her, and he did, and then she refused to try it because it looked gross. He was like, "Okay, I made you an egg cream," and she said, No. Elle asked what "I've got your back" means, and Hopper explained, and she said, "Oh, okay, I've got your back." And then he hugged her and told her that he has hers, and that was very sweet. As a book, I would rate it not for me. This one just wasn't for me. I don't really know how to give it another score. Also, I didn't technically read it. I just kind of half read it. As a Stranger Things tie-in novel, I would rate it like 6 out of 10. I think the parts in the cabin are really nice as a glimpse into Hopper and Elle's relationship when they aren't fighting and when the world isn't ending. But the Hopper backstory stuff didn't really feel that specific to the world of Stranger Things. It felt more like just a gritty detective novel that happened to have Hopper as a protagonist. I think if I was a dad who liked crime mysteries, I would love this book, but I am not, and I didn't. Also, sorry if you can hear a lot of cars outside while I'm filming this. I think they're doing construction down the road or something, sorry. After those first 2 more adult mystery novels, they've been focusing solely on young adult novels about the kids and teens in the show, and I think it's working out better for them. Runaway Max, written by Brenna Jovanoff and published in 2019, was the first in this series of YA novels, and so far, I think it might be the best. I zoomed through it in like a day, and personally I really liked it. It's partially a prequel of Max's backstory before she moved to Hawkins, and partially a novelization of season 2, and I think it works really well as both of those. I will be so honest, I read it illegally online at first, and then I bought a physical copy because I liked it that much. Throughout the book, it cuts back and forth between the events of season 2 and Max hesitantly befriending Lucas and Dustin, and what her life was like back in California when her mom first started dating Neil, and Billy became her stepbrother, and the events that led to them moving to Hawkins. I'm going to mainly focus on the prequel stuff because that's pretty much all new information about Max, and I feel like that's more interesting to talk about. We find out that she had a small group of friends who were all boys because the girls at school always thought she was weird and didn't like the things that she likes, and her best friend is a boy named Nate who she says Will reminds her of. He was also a very gentle little boy. They met in first grade when some boys were being mean to him, made him cry, and she liked his Spider-Man t-shirt and offered to show him her comic books. And after that they were best friends, and every year they wore matching Halloween costumes, and he didn't care, quote, when I sounded like I was mad about something when I was really just asking a question. As a side note, if you are autistic and you read Max as being at all coded as autistic, you will probably love this book because a lot of it is just about her having a hard time emoting the way she's supposed to and not really understanding social norms, and it's very good for me personally. Throughout it, there's this building tension with Billy, and Max keeps alluding to something that happened in California that was bad, and she feels guilty for it, and it's the reason that she doesn't have friends anymore by the time they get to Hawkins, and it's why she's afraid to make new friends. When her mom first starts dating Neil, Max can tell right away that he isn't a good guy, but she's kind of hopeful when she first meets Billy. She thinks his car is cool, and she sees the ways that girls look at him, and she's excited to have like this cool big brother. She can tell there's tension between him and Neil, but at first she thinks that living with Neil won't be so bad if she has someone there who understands. She thinks that she and Billy could be allies, and that maybe they could get through it together, but it quickly becomes clear that Billy has no interest in being her ally. There's this crazy scene where Max is hanging out in this creek bed behind the house, and Billy and his friends come over and find the mummified corpse of a cat that died by the creek, and Billy sets it on fire while Max is begging him not to, and that's when Max realizes that Billy might just be Lifetime movie crazy. Things escalate, and then one day in that same creek bed, Max and Nate are hanging out, and Billy comes over and tells Max that she needs to stop hanging out with boys or people are going to say that she's easy. Max and Nate try to stand up to Billy and tell him to leave them alone, and in retaliation, Billy grabs Nate's arm and breaks it. Just fully grabs it and snaps it with his hands. He made Max lie and say it was an accident, but she thinks that they moved away because Neil knew that Billy did it and that people would probably figure it out. Throughout the book, she compares Billy to Michael Myers and says at one point that Michael Myers is the scariest horror villain because he's not an otherworldly monster, he's just a man, but he's so determined and so obsessed that nothing can stop him. To her, Billy is the same way, and she feels helpless around him because he's unpredictable, and when he decides to do something, there's nothing you can do to stop him, as is shown over and over again to her. In the present, Max starts getting closer to Lucas, and there's a lot of very sweet moments, like when she says that Lucas, quote, looked thoughtful, not hostile, and when he smiled it was wide and sheepish. It had been forever since it felt like someone was actually going out of their way to try to see me. She's also afraid to get close to him, though, because of Billy. It is also made explicitly clear that when Billy said there are a certain type of people in this world that you stay away from, he was being racist. The exact quote in the book is, "He was acting like he was just looking out for me, but I knew what he really meant." Neil, and I guess Billy, had a lot of opinions about anybody who wasn't white and Lutheran and a man. Also, in the show, when Lucas shows up to tell her about the Demodogs, Max is duct taping her skateboard back together, and in the book we find out that is because Billy saw her talking to Lucas and ran it over with his car to punish her. The rest of the book is just pretty much a direct novelization of the last few episodes of season 2 from Max's perspective, but it's really nice and it made me cry. When she meets Steve for the first time, she's kind of wary of him because she's only ever met teenage boys who were mean to her, so she's surprised when he just treats her like one of the other kids, and when he jumps in front of her and protects her from the Demodog in the bus. It's very, very sweet when there's that scene where they hear the Demodogs outside the buyer's house, because the entire book Max has just been searching for safety and repeatedly being denied that by Billy and Neil, who are direct dangers, and by her mom, who let them into their home and won't stand up to them, and Nate being punished for trying to protect her, and it's just so cathartic for her to finally have people willing to stand between her and danger. The direct quote from this scene is, "We stood in the cramped little living room and waited. The dogs were coming for us, but at least I wasn't facing them alone. For most of my life, I'd been like a balloon tied to a railing somewhere, unprotected. I'd gotten so used to the feeling that it was hard to realize it was gone. The others were around me now. They didn't even know me, and still, they'd put me in the middle of their circle. They weren't about to just give up and let the world roll over us the way my mom did." I already loved Max, but this book made me love her even more, and I hope they give her a sword in season 5, because it's what she deserves. As a book, I'd give it an 8.5 out of 10. It's definitely connected to the show Stranger Things, but the author was able to still tell what felt like a complete story while doing this character study of Max. As a Stranger Things tie-in, 10 out of 10. I think this book is kind of the standard I'm holding the other books in the series to. It does a good job of building off of the existing characters and exploring them more, while still feeling very grounded in the world of the original source material. In 2021, we got Rebel Robin by A.R. Capetta, along with a tie-in podcast of the same name, narrated by Maya Hawke, which was not as good. This is just a YA lesbian coming-of-age novel set in the fictional town of Hawkins, Indiana, and I love that for it. It's set in the 1983-84 school year, so it goes through the events of season 1, but from Robin's perspective, so we kind of see what that was like for the townspeople who didn't know about the Upside Down, which is kind of a fun perspective. There's a lot of cameos from the main characters, like Robin sees the kids at the grocery store with Mrs. Wheeler and refers to Mike as a ghostly child with a frightful dark bowl cut. She also has a run-in with Hopper later on after he would have found Eleven in the woods, and she makes a note that his truck smells very strongly of waffles and she thinks he's very weird. She calls Hawkins boring, and there's maybe my favorite exchange in the book. "This town? Boring?" He pulls down a pair of aviators. "They would look cool on literally anyone else." "Sweetie, you have no idea." he drives off with an unnecessary spray of gravel. It is very funny to imagine what absolute freaks all of the Stranger Things characters would look like to outside observers. And, of course, there's also a lot of cameos from Steve, which are all very fun because Robin is just seething inside about how, quote, Steve Harrington is always going to be the same. He's always going to suck exactly this much forever. For the most part, though, this really is just a lesbian coming-of-age novel with a few Stranger Things bits sprinkled in. At the start of the book, Robin really doesn't know who she is or who she wants to be, and the book is about her trying to figure that out. It's her sophomore year, and her only friends are her marching band partners, but she doesn't even feel very close to them. 2 of her friends have started dating, and she's feeling pressure to get a boyfriend, but she's never understood the appeal of dating because boys are gross. But she knows she's not supposed to say that, so she's just been pretending to have incredibly high standards. She does not yet know that she just isn't attracted to any boys at all, and that there's maybe a reason she feels very emotionally invested in the AIDS epidemic, and also why she can't stop staring at Tammy Thompson and fantasizing about being her very close best friend who sleeps in her bed with her and holds her hand. And it's also very me in high school. It's insane. In case it wasn't clear by how very real and relatable this book is, the author A.R. Capetta is gay. I believe they are also non-binary, which does add to Robin's general she-they energy. Robin feels very trapped in Hawkins and feels sure that somewhere in the world there is a place for people like her where she wouldn't feel like an outsider and where she can find friends who understand her instead of just tolerating her, and she has decided that that place is Europe. She hashes out a whole plan to save up money and run away to Europe for the summer and travel and eat croissants and make use of her fluency in 4 languages. She does a little job search and meets Bob at Radio Shack, and he's the kindest man in the world. She was inspired in this whole endeavor by Barb's disappearance. We learned that at one point she and Barb were close friends, but sometime in middle school they drifted apart and Barb and Nancy became best friends and Robin was left with nobody. She is convinced that Barb really did run away from Hawkins and is now outliving the life that Robin has always dreamed of. Throughout the book, Robin is on a search for a kindred spirit to join her on her adventure, but everywhere she turns she finds a dead end. She desperately wants for Tammy Thompson to be that kindred spirit and writes out an elaborate fantasy about how she wants to take Tammy Thompson to Europe and hold hands at the Champs-Elysees and share desserts and feed each other pastries and snuggle in one bed together. And it is only after writing all of that out that she realizes that these are incredibly gay desires to have because she is gay and she wants to kiss Tammy Thompson in a gay way. Some plot things happen and Robin ends up breaking into prom to confess her love to Tammy Thompson and see if maybe she is the soulmate Robin has imagined her to be, but not before Robin gives herself an incredibly gay makeover 10 minutes before prom, where she cuts up her prom dress and also cuts off all her hair and puts on a suit jacket and her sneakers. She steals her parents' car and drives to the school. For a moment I thought this was a continuity error with Stranger Things canon, but then she immediately wrecks 4 cars and totals her own and is never ever allowed to drive ever again. There's a whole dramatic climax of her breaking into prom and being chased by Hopper, and she doesn't end up getting to confess her love to Tammy Thompson, but it's okay, because she decides that maybe there are some nice people in Hawkins, and maybe she can stick it out a little longer, and also she does get to dance with a girl, and it's very cute, and also the girl feels like a self-insert of me in high school. Her name is Sheena, and I'm just gonna read you her description and show you a picture of me when I was 16, so you can just kind of get the vibe. If I'm worried about not quite belonging, Sheena Rollins is the poster child for aggressively not fitting in. She wears white from head to toe. Sometimes it's white overalls and a white tiara, and sometimes it's a puffy white mini skirt and an oversized flowing shirt. None of it follows the unspoken code of what everyone else is wearing, and most of the time it looks like Sheena sewed at least part of the outfit herself. Another point of bullying for my brand-obsessed peers. Today she's in a white 50s style dress with tiny black dots and a white cloth headband. The epilogue is Robin at Scoops Ahoy during Steve's first day of work, and she specifically says to him, "We might be co-workers, but there is no universe in which you and I become friends." And then she sees his stupid little uniform and decides that maybe this job rocks because she gets to just get paid to make fun of Steve Harrington all summer. As a book, I'd give it a 9 out of 10. As I said before, this is basically just a lesbian coming-of-age novel, and it's a pretty good one. I enjoyed it, and I'd like to read more of A.R. Capetta's work at some point when I'm done with this project. As a Stranger Things tie-in, I would give it like a 7.5 out of 10. It was very enjoyable to read as a fan of Stranger Things, but Robin didn't always feel 100% like Robin, and I kind of wish that it had been split up like the Max book between her backstory and her during the show. I really love the dynamic between Steve and Robin, and I think my ideal version of this book would have been glimpses into Robin's backstory paired with like a little slice of life look at the two of them post season 3, just hanging out at the video store and working through their trauma together, and just hanging out. I just want to see them being friends. I like that they're friends. While Max's book felt like it was about her searching for safety and finally finding it, Robin's book felt like it was about her searching for somebody who accepts her, and it was nice knowing that she finds that later with Steve and the rest of the party, but it would have been really nice to see some of that in the book to kind of conclude her arc. Either way, I did really like the book, and I would recommend it if you are gay and like Stranger Things, and especially if you like Robin. As a podcast, I would give it like a 6 out of 10. I listened to the Rebel Robin podcast one night when I couldn't sleep, and it was very fun, but it honestly made me kind of hesitant to read the book. I didn't know if it was like a direct dramatization of scenes from the book, or if it was fully separate, and it turns out it's like a separate plot that's happening in between the plot of the book, and it occasionally overlaps. It's mostly conversations between Robin and her gay teacher, which is nice conceptually, but because it's taking place before Robin realizes that she's gay, it never quite hits the mark for me as like an older gay mentor relationship. It wasn't written by the author of the book, which makes sense because the vibe just felt kind of different to me. It is voiced by Maya Hawke, which is fun, and also it makes it much funnier when Steve comes in and is voiced by someone who sounds nothing like Joe Keery, so that was very fun for me. I would recommend the book over the podcast, but both were fun. Last year we got Lucas on the Line, written by Suyi Davies. This one is from Lucas's perspective, starting right after season 3 and following him into season 4. I think they chose a really good time to focus on Lucas because he's struggling a lot with knowing that he needs to give Max space to work through everything she's been going through, while also missing her and wanting to be with her, and then also growing apart from Mike and Dustin as they enter high school and meet new people. It also explored Lucas's identity as a black kid in a small town in the 80s a lot more than the show ever has, and how that affects his dynamic with the other kids and with his family. Since Noah and I are not black, we will be linking to some reviews from black fans down below to give their perspectives on it. In the book, Lucas has decided that he wants to be a new version of himself in high school and try new things. On the first day, he's paired with a peer mentor who's a black sophomore named Jay. Side note for anybody who likes the headcanon of Lucas being bi, when he first meets Jay, Lucas says, "Jermaine DeMaria was the first black boy I've seen at Hawkins High. He's a good-looking one, too." I'm not sure where that thought comes from, but it just pops out at me. Jay essentially becomes Lucas's Steve, and Lucas mentions that he finally gets why Dustin has such hero worship for Steve now that he has a cool older friend to look up to. Jay is very cool and nice and plays on the basketball team and encourages Lucas to try out. Lucas agrees because he took one look at Jay and decided that actually he does know who he wants to be in high school, and it is Jay. Mike and Dustin find out about Lucas signing up for basketball, and they get mad because he's not joining Hellfire with them and their cool new friend Eddie, and Lucas has a lot of conflicted feelings about how he loves the other boys in the party, but he's only ever had white friends, and joining the basketball team is the first chance he's ever had to make friends that he could maybe relate to more. He also feels really torn between the two options of being either a jock or a nerd, because Lucas kind of wants to be both, and he doesn't want to have to just choose one. There's also a lot of very sweet moments between Lucas and Max, like when he thinks about the last time he held her hand, which was last summer at Starcourt before everything else happened. We were getting ice cream. Her palm was so soft I said I wanted to order it as an ice cream flavor. She laughed. It sounded like the birds from Cinderella. Also in one scene he just sits next to her and she lets him share her headphones and she plays the entirety of Running Up That Hill for him, and they sit together and listen to it because she's not ready to talk to him, but she wants him to know how she's feeling, and that's so tender. The plot stuff that happens is that Lucas makes it onto the JV basketball team, but he's not very good, and he knows that the only reason he made it on is because he's black, and the coach just assumed he'd be a good athlete, and the other kids are racist, and it sucks. And then over winter break, some of the shitty basketball boys put a homemade bomb in Jay's locker, and luckily nobody got hurt, but they could have killed him. Well, The janitor got hurt, but he didn't die. Nobody died. But they could have fully killed him, and the school won't expel them, so Jay has to move away. Because he cannot go to school with the kids who put a bomb in his locker. That's insane. Lucas ends up getting Jay's spot on the basketball team, which is why he's there as a freshman, and Eddie lets him join Hellfire for the spring semester, and things are starting to look up for Lucas after all the terribleness of winter break. And then season 4 starts and everything is terrible again. It follows the events of season 4 up to Max waking up in the cemetery with Lucas holding her. I made note of a couple passages that kind of sum up the vibes of the book really well. I stand there, words caught in my mouth. That is exactly what I've been trying to tell everyone who will listen about change, that I do understand it must happen, and it's not a bad thing, and I'm not afraid of it anymore, and even though sometimes it makes me look like I'm the bad guy, the enemy, it just means I'm changing. This is what I want to tell her, that I understand that she is changing, that we're all changing, and I can understand and respect that, and even give her room to change if she needs to. What I hope to happen is for her not to be alone, not to have to go through the isolation I've felt all this time, not to have to live in the upside down much longer. I want to tell her that I'm here to help ease her back to the real world, just as other people have helped me to do the same. But the door of the girls' bathroom stands between us like a mountain, one that I may never be able to climb over to reach her on the other side. On my ride back, I'm less nervous, maybe even determined, to show them, to show everyone that I contain multitudes, that there's more to the new black kid on the team, and not just because Coach thinks any black kid has to be on the team. I'm also the black kid who loves horror movies and Karate Kid and satanic D&D, who is Hawkins through and through, born, bred, bled for, who cares about his ex-girlfriend who lives in a trailer park, who has fought monsters 3 times and saved a town that doesn't even acknowledge he's there. No more hiding, no more apologizing, no more waiting for some other time to be myself. The time is now, and I'm ready, wholly and unashamedly. I'm ready to live in the moment. I pedal fast back to the gym, only one thought on my mind. The real Lucas is coming, and Hawkins had better get ready. As a book, I would give it like a 7.5 out of 10. It was well written, but the pacing was maybe a little bit weird. The stuff with Jay and Lucas getting on the team, and then like the bomb in the locker and all that stuff, and then the season 4 stuff kind of felt like 2 different books. But they weren't bad books, they were both good books. It just felt like a little bit weird together, if that makes sense. With this book and the Robin book, you kind of really need the context of the show to feel like there's a satisfying arc, and I think this one especially would be really weird to read on its own. As a Stranger Things tie-in, I'd give it like a 9 out of 10. This is a really nice character study of Lucas. If you like Lucas, you will enjoy this book. I liked Lucas and Max after season 4 especially, but this book really made me appreciate them together, and it also built really nicely on Lucas's relationship with Erica, which we don't get to see that much of in the show, so that was nice. So that's the last full novel that's been released until Flight of Icarus, which comes out on October 31st. I also want to give a quick rundown of the comics I read and which ones were worth reading, but first, because he can't be here to film with me, I'm going to cut to Noah for the first installment of It's Noa Time!
Okay, so my general thoughts on the books are that nobody really seemed to know what was going on with them. The books do not feel like a cohesive idea so much. We started out with these kind of lore-expanding stories and then moved into comics and teen novels, and the teen novels take way less of a lore and supernatural approach. I think a lot about that idea that prequels by their nature aren't going to reveal anything so much. They're just going to get you to the point where you know the story starts. And so I think to do that in something that is so expansive and lore heavy as Stranger Things, right, you need to rely less on, and here's what these characters are like, and more all of the really interesting bits about the world that you've made up. I don't know how to sit here and explain the difference between lore and character information, but it just feels like everyone was real confused. It feels like everyone was real confused about what we were doing. We're going to talk about the reviews for the Lucas book. It's really weird that I can't find any reviews that are specifically by a Black person or any person of color, that they identify such in the review and talk about it, because it feels very Like, a lot of the reviews are from white people who are like, finally, the Duffers don't talk about this in the show. They're so bad at it. And it's like, well, yeah, they are. And it feels weird. It feels weird that they go through, like, such specific processes to get, like, own voices authors for the books where that's, you know, important. And then you just get this really weird, disconnected young adult book that, thanks, Fig. So I guess my overall review is that I don't like YA anymore, which is not what I thought my review was going to be. I think it's funny when everybody just describes Mike as a weird ghost child.
Wow. Thank you for those thought-provoking additions, Noah. Now, real quick, I'm gonna give a rundown of the 4 comic books I read because they made a lot of those, and most of them didn't sound that interesting to me, so I just kind of got the ones that I thought I would like. The Other Side from 2019 is Will's perspective of season 1, and it was very disappointing for me personally. I was hoping it would answer some of my many questions about how he survived and if he was able to eat or drink anything, and how he could see Joyce's alphabet on the wall. It didn't answer any of those questions. There were some cute parts like the illustrations of the kids' D&D campaigns, and also when Will sees Elle in the woods, and also this one panel when he wakes up in the hospital that fucks harder than maybe anything else Stranger Things has ever done. But that was kind of it. Mostly it's just him hiding and being scared and sad. Science Camp, released in 2021, rocks. It's what Dustin did at science camp, like right before season 3, and it's like a fun little Scooby-Doo adventure. I think sometimes within the show, Stranger Things gets too caught up on making everything tie back to the Upside Down, so even with like 3-hour episodes, we almost never get just like fun side adventures, and I really liked that this one was just completely not supernatural. If you like Dustin at all, I highly recommend this one, and also if you like the Scoops Troop, there's a shorter comic at the end about Dustin and Erica and Robin and Steve, and it's very cute even if the art looks terrible. I'm an artist, I'm allowed to say it looks bad. 10 out of 10, would recommend. I loved this one, it was my favorite. The Tales from Hawkins series just released in August, and I got issues 2 and 3 because they were the only ones that looked interesting to me. Issue 2 is about Murray and shows him during season 2 when he was trying to investigate Barb's disappearance, and it was short, but I like Murray, so I liked it. 3 is about Robin working with Tammy Thompson on a school project, and it is also very short, but it's a fun little bit of Robin for when your stores are depleted. I've seen complaints that every piece of Robin media is just about her pre-season 3 having a crush on Tammy Thompson, and yeah, I do wish we got some variety, but this was still fun. I'd give both of those like a 7 out of 10. And now, froggy friends, I must bid you adieu, but I will see you again very, very, very soon for part 2 of this video, because the people at Random House Publishing keep ignoring my emails and won't let me read Flight of Icarus early, even though I'm a very important influencer with like 5 million subscribers. Don't check that, especially Random House Publishing if you're watching. I'm a very important influencer. Keep an eye out for that video in the next few days because it'll be posted as soon as I finish the book. So hopefully like November 1st or 2nd, something like that. There's also some more fun stuff for that video other than just that book, and that stuff's already been filmed. So look forward to some fun stuff. I read some bad books for that video. All our links are down below. Like, comment, subscribe. Bedtime, baby! Come and sit on our log. We'll have fun with Hedgehog. Noah, Cloak, Frog, and Hedge. You can be our new best friend. H-E-D-G, F-R-O-G. Hedgehog on the Wii.
Okay. Okay, baby. Okay, so as much Fig.
Also, I still have the Derek Hale Build-A-Bear. Okay. Bye.